everyone. So this talk today is going to be very much about Cornwall. I'm no social scientist, I'm not a city planner, and I'm most definitely not an economist. But what I do have is a fundamental belief that we can make the world a better place. And this starts, if I take you back a little bit, to when I was 12 years old. I used to, just after my grand died, sadly, cycle every Wednesday evening over to my granddad's house. It was about a mile, and we'd have dinner. He would go and specially buy his only dessert of the week, he would say, little sticky toffee puddings with custard, from M&S, a treat. But while we were having that, we would talk about the world. What was going on, current affairs, his favourite football team, normally, but also things and the problems that the world was facing, what we thought the world could be, and how it could change, putting the world to rights, as my mum used to say. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because what it's meant is that from a very early age, I've had this grounding belief that we can make the world a better place, that with ambition and vision, we can dream of a brighter future for us all. And so what I want in this talk is to kind of use some of that experience of mine, that belief, and translate that to Cornwall. Since I've moved here, I've been very fortunate to set up my own business that cares deeply about people and planet and profit. Maybe less so about profit, we'll move on to that. But also, I'm very lucky to be a trustee of a fantastic charity as well. So I've been able to put these things into practice. And the talk I'm going to do today is very much about what I believe is a more ambitious future for Cornwall. But I do think it can be applied to any region that's similar anywhere else in the world. One that may occasionally seem like a peninsula, a bit cut off from the rest of the world and sometimes left behind. I think we can be more ambitious. But to start, I'm going to do a little bit of audience participation. So apologies for this. And I'm going to ask you to put your hands up. And if you put your hand up, just leave it up until the end. So the very first question is, do you think, or put your hand up, sorry, if you think that £50,000 is a low salary, a low income? No one? Maybe? £40,000? Low income? What about £30,000? Okay, quite a lot of hands. What about £20,000 as a low income? Pretty much everyone in the room, I would say, thinks that £20,000 is a low income. Well, according to the Cornwall Community Foundation's Vital Signs report, that was done in collaboration with the University of Exeter in 2021, the average salary in Cornwall was just £20,600. Now, everyone in this room has pretty much put their hand up to say that's low, which it is, and I would hazard a guess that most people in this room probably earn more or significantly more than that. So we are all in a privileged few in many ways. And that's only 79% of the average income of the rest of the UK. So Cornwall does face real challenges in terms of deprivation. And there's some other statistics that I think are worth mentioning. 40% of all work in Cornwall is part-time, often seasonal, often low-paid, and often insecure. We have an above-average number of people who are self-employed, but nearly half of them earn less than the minimum wage. And perhaps more shockingly, over 20 areas in Cornwall have more than one-third of children living in poverty. Now, this, I think, shows the challenges that we have here in Cornwall, and it's been this way for many years. And unfortunately, these are figures that got worse between 2015 and 2019, and have got worse again as a result of the COVID pandemic and the way that sort of compounded many of these challenges. And Britain as a whole, Cornwall, these incomes, 79% of the UK average, Britain is very likely by 2030 to fall behind former Soviet bloc countries like Poland and Slovakia. Now, while I mention this, it might sound all very doom and gloom, but I think it's important to put into the context that Cornwall faces significant challenges. But going back to that belief, I think there is a way forward, that things like globalization have helped shape a better future and can help deliver a better future. Now, one of the things that is often talked about as being a way that places like Cornwall can lift themselves out of this predicament is localism. The idea that people can and should be buying exclusively locally. They should support local businesses, local decision-making. And there are some really fantastic parts of localism that I think we should be celebrating. Who better to make local decisions than local people, especially somewhere like Cornwall, where we often have quite unique challenges that aren't really replicated across the rest of the UK. But I do think that localism is a bit of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it encourages you to buy things 30, 50 miles away from where you are, and on the other, it can be quite isolationist, inward-looking. And you may think, well, if everyone's buying everything nearby, only 30 miles down the road, you're shopping in St Agnes when you live in Falmouth, that would be a good thing for Cornwall. But I would challenge that and say that actually all that really does is help solidify economic power in urban locations. Because if you're somewhere like Bristol or London or Manchester, and you can buy everything within 30 miles, why would you be buying your services from places based in Cornwall? Why would you be looking at designers or creative agencies or service-based businesses if you are encouraged to buy only locally? Cornwall gets left behind, and it gets left, unfortunately, with one or two things: tourism and agriculture. Now, tourism is an important part of Cornwall's economy and always will be, but we also need to acknowledge that in many ways, some of the challenges that Cornwall faces are as a result of being disconnected. And often the challenge is that Cornwall, for lots of people that aren't from nearby, is more expensive than going to many other parts of Europe. It's quicker and easier to get to many European cities from London than it is to get to Cornwall. So I think localism is there's a paradox in it, fundamentally, that while on one hand it sort of devolves power, it doesn't actually devolve the opportunity for success. So what I want to talk about instead is a different way of thinking about it, because I believe Cornwall, having set up my own business here, is really quite unique. That we have a connectivity, a culture of collaboration, a business community that really is unlike anywhere else, not just in the UK, but I think personally in the world. And I think we have an opportunity and the foundations to make real change. And why do I think that? Well, first of all, I think Cornwall has this fantastic natural resource at its heart. But it also has that culture that I talked about. We have some amazing businesses and organizations down here, the foundations of this future success. The University of Exeter's ESI, Environment and Sustainability Institute, is one of the leading climate science research institutes anywhere in the world. Falmouth University, is nurturing talent that's going on to work in film and TV, fashion and design, not just in the UK, but in Hollywood and further afield too. We have the Camborne School of Mines that's been training the world's miners for well over 100 years and is now at the forefront of a green mining revolution, helping to secure those vital minerals we need for the green energy transition. We have one of the leading specialty coffee roasters based down in Porthleven. We have pioneering fashion brands. We have craft breweries who are leaders in their space across Europe and help to make that industry what it is today. There's a £7.5 million turnover candle business whose state-of-the-art factory emerges up out of the country lanes of St. Eville. We have really great opportunity at our fingertips. So the term that I want to talk about a bit more is glocalism. Now, I don't really like the word. It sounds like you've got some kind of illness, I think, and maybe needs a little bit of branding work on it. But it comes from a Japanese phrase, which is called, and I might mispronounce this, dochakuka. And that was used in the 80s to show how globalized farming trends were tailored to local needs. And it's very much, in some ways, globalism has talked about the sort of imposition of globalized forces and tailoring to local nuances so that people don't notice. You know, a bit like McDonald's opening in Cornwall and doing pasties or something. But that's not what I'm seeing it as. What I'm seeing it as is an opportunity for Cornwall to take those very good bits of localism, the things that are unique to us, our work culture, work-life balance, our ingenuity, our rebellious nature, and to combine that with a global outlook. Because I think Cornwall's opportunity doesn't just lie in the UK, but it lies everywhere else as well. Because if you look at those businesses I've talked about, those organizations, I think we're punching above our weight. The B Corp movement, of which my business is a fearless advocate for, is a great example of that. Cornwall is one of the leading lights in that space. There's more B Corps in Cornwall than in major urban centres like Manchester and Liverpool. And why is that the case? We've been competing with Bristol to have the most outside of London. That's because I think there's that unique business culture here. Businesses that care about more than just profit. They care about people and planet too. And that's an amazing thing that we should be celebrating and building upon. It shows that we can be a leader in this space of building business that's fit for the future that we, as Cornish people or Cornish business people, hopefully believe in. So how do we turn this dream of a better Cornwall into reality? Well, I think we need to hone essentially 5, what I'm going to call superpowers, but basically 5 areas that I think we can build on to push Cornwall to be this global leader, to be this iconic destination for business and for people to live and work and thrive. So, the first one, Cornwall is the place to do business. Now, Cornwall has some challenges. It's often a bit disconnected from the rest of the UK. But I think we need to take the things that we've got, those businesses, and begin to cluster them. Look at the university. It's such a shame that people who, like Sophie was saying earlier, that people to achieve have to leave Cornwall. They might come to the University of Exeter or Falmouth or be at Truro College, fall in love with Cornwall or be in love with Cornwall, and yet to have a career, they have to leave. We need to keep that talent here. We need to build businesses that can fundamentally support those really exciting jobs. And interestingly, Cornwall has below average unemployment. We actually don't necessarily have a large problem with a lack of jobs, it's just the wrong kind of jobs. So we need to be encouraging those businesses to cluster together. Look at the spaceport and Aero Hub around Newquay, the potential that has. Creative clusters in Falmouth and Penryn and Newquay. These all have that really exciting opportunity to build together, not just through government support, but through businesses. Not just supporting small business, but big business too, that can help to cascade down opportunity to other industries as well. The second is, in these 2 clicks, creating places and spaces for people to thrive. Now, my experience of running a business in Cornwall is that there are big challenges with this. Not only are we disconnected from a transport point of view, we also have issues with things like office space. We can't rely on innovation centres and out-of-town business parks to be the only places that businesses can succeed. Instead, we need to have a cross-section of business support and space available, inner town co-working spaces and grow-on spaces, so that businesses for the future are able to survive and thrive where they need. And this comes back to transport as well. You know, I mentioned earlier about Cornwall's being disconnected, but the problem is you can fly to London, but it's dirty. You get the train, but it's expensive, and you can drive, but it's time-consuming. So we are already at disadvantage from that point of view. But what we do have increasingly is fantastic digital connectivity. There are brands and businesses based in Cornwall that are world leaders in their space because they serve international customers. So I think by creating these fantastic working environments for people, that using the opportunity, being near beaches and sea and open space, that work-life balance, that harmony that it brings, and combining that with this digital connectivity, we can really sell ourselves to the world. The third is Cornwall's housing solution. Now, it'd be remiss of me to talk about jobs in Cornwall and the future of Cornwall without talking about the challenge of housing. But I actually believe, while we do have an acute problem, that the solution for this is already here. Look at Nansledden. It's an exemplar housing development. It's got social housing and affordable housing, housing that allows people of all kinds to live together. It's built new high streets and new communities. We have the experience of building that here in Cornwall, so much so that leaders from across the country are using that as a template for replicating elsewhere. Yet again, Cornwall is the one doing the revolutionary thing, and everyone else is copying. Let's build out on that and make Cornwall a really exciting place. That also, of course, means challenging sometimes the, how would you describe it, I suppose, the second home problem, Airbnbs. We know it's an issue, but what we can be doing is supporting fantastic tourism projects that are developing sustainable tourism choices, not taking away from local people. And fourth, language that empowers. Now, a few years ago, a famous Cornish entrepreneur was on a podcast and maybe said some not very nice things about Cornwall, that the Cornish people harked back to old days that were never really good anyway, and accused them of a lack of ambition. Now, I don't for a minute believe that. This talk, if anything, is about ambition. But there was a truth in some of what he said about maybe Cornwall's a bit too humble. We're a little bit too, we don't want to push the boat out. We are used to being put down by others and having to fight for our own thing. So we kind of keep our success to ourselves. But I think we should change that. Ambitious and bold language should be used in every part of how we promote Cornwall, both as a business sector and tourism, and as a place to live and work. There's a reason why Falmouth and St Ives have been mentioned as some of the best places to live in the entirety of the UK. Let's celebrate that more. That's not about tourism, that's about work, that's about life, that's about living standards. And, genuinely, I think that the language we use, we need to rethink. So, for example, it's always talked about in Cornwall that it's a rural economy. We want it to be the best rural creative economy, the best rural this, rural that. Let's ditch the word rural. Let's just be the bloody best creative economy. Let's be the best place to visit in the UK. Let's be a destination for businesses and for people from not just the UK, but from elsewhere too. So let's rethink our language. That's superpower number 4. And then the final one is Cornwall itself, really. Cornwall is unique. I think since I've moved here, what I've really seen is this connection to nature that is really quite transformative for me. The fact that I can tell people from home and from elsewhere that, I went paddleboarding off Gilly Beach once and there was dolphins swimming underneath me. People are like, nah, that's not true. But it is. And you have stories, probably people in this room who have been surfing and seen seals in the water nipping at the back of their board, or who go swimming every single day. There's challenges for our environment, the pollution of our water, and the climate emergency is the single biggest challenge to fighting deprivation there is. But I think Cornwall's unique approach to this, the fact that businesses here in that B Corp movement are already sustainable. They're already thinking about this. They were doing it before it was trendy and cool and all the big boys were doing it. So using that knowledge, using our connection to nature, we can harness into our fifth superpower. Now, it might all sound like a bit of a rant, and to some extent this is, but hopefully this is about positioning Cornwall as something more. And an example for me recently is that there was a really ambitious plan to re-engineer Commercial Road in Penryn into a place fit for people, one that would support cafes and restaurants and entrepreneurial spaces. But it was kind of undone by the old guard, people that wanted everything just to stay the same. And what I'm saying is, as Cornwall, we should be more ambitious. That the challenges that we face are challenges faced across the world, but deprivation isn't going to be fought by other people telling us what to do, nor by us being unambitious. Let's not be narrow, let's be bold, and let's be courageous. Because for me, modern richness is about more than just profit. It's about people and planet. And 200 years ago, Cornwall had the richest square mile on Earth. And I think in the future, we can have that again. Thank you.